Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Katrina Menzigian, and welcome to our fifth in a series of LinkedIn Lives focused on the issues and interests of analyst relations people. I am a vice president with Everest Group, and I lead our analyst relations engagement practice, where our goal is to help make sure that we as a firm are working as effectively as possible with analyst relations stakeholders and to make sure that you have what you need to get your work done effectively on your side. So I'm very excited to tackle this topic today. We chose this as our next topic because we are seeing increasingly that AR people are asked to demonstrate how what they do contributes to some kind of business or revenue objective at their firm. And so whether you are rolling up to a marketing team or you're rolling up to some kind of revenue generation team, we realize that increasingly AR needs to demonstrate a value in a commercial sense to their stakeholders across their company. So the purpose today is to help identify what some of those mechanisms and opportunities are and how you might consider bringing resources available to you to meet the needs of those stakeholders. So our conversation will tackle sales issues as well as marketing issues. But to help me have that conversation today and to share some really nice and deep insight, I have two guests joining me. With us today, we have Alan Racy, who's the global lead for talent services at Accenture. He's based out of Vancouver, Canada, and has been with Accenture for many years in a global role. And we also have my colleague Molly Norton joining us. Molly is based out of San Antonio. And Molly has spent many years here at Everest Group, but before that, she was at a different research firm, so she knows our industry. Whereas Alan is someone who's very much like the internal customers that you may be serving, and we wanted him to bring that perspective to the conversation. Molly has had the opportunity to work with AR people across all kinds of companies of various sizes, various geographies, technology versus service provider, and has a very nice and deep sense of what are the issues that AR people talk to her about. And so I'm going to ask Alan and Molly each to tell us a little bit about their own personal experience working with AR and what their touch point is. So I wanted to ask Alan to speak first, and then Molly will come in afterwards.
Thanks, Katrina, and nice to see everybody on the call here. So as Katrina mentioned, I'm responsible for the managed services business at Accenture in the talent space. And so I get involved in a lot of areas around our strategy, our positioning, enabling sales, and determining what investments we need to be making in order to continue to grow and differentiate our services. The analyst relations role is critically important to us and to me from an overall business perspective. And I've had the pleasure of working with some amazing analyst relations people and also analysts over the years. And I hope to bring a really unique perspective here, as Katrina said, from almost like an internal customer perspective around how I see the opportunities for you as analyst relations individuals to drive more value and impact. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Molly, I'll hand it over to you.
Sure. So great to have everyone join us. So yes, I've worked with analyst relations, my clients over many years, and I really just work with them to help them bring more value to their internal stakeholders. So whether it's connecting with the analysts, setting up in-person or virtual sessions, strategy sessions, a number of different ways that we can bring value to their stakeholders. That's what I've done over time. So it's great to be with everybody today.
Great. So we've been watching the number of folks joining our call climb. If you feel the urge, can you share with us where you are? We had hundreds of people register, and they were from all over the world. So that's really exciting because I recognize many names and many faces, as did Alan and Molly. So totally appreciate that. If you have a moment to throw into the chat where you're from and what geography you're from, that just helps everybody else get a sense of the global community that we're touching right now. So we'd appreciate that. One of the things that I wanted to mention that we appreciate your time and your interest. And so what we do include, and we'll mention this again, but for those of you that are interested, we have a complimentary offering for you for joining today. We will be making available to you a set of deals, deal data, whether it's ITO and digital oriented, ITS and digital oriented, or BPS and digital oriented. We have put together a set of live and current deal data from the Everest Group Market Intelligence offering, EGMI, you may have heard of it. And it really includes a lot of information about active deals. 200 to 300 deals will be included in the set that we share with you. And it includes information, of course, about the client, but it's about the scope of the services, the scope of the technology that's involved, the providers and technology providers that are involved, the geographies, the duration, all kinds of things that are interesting that we think your sales and marketing folks will find very valuable. So we're thinking of it as a resource that will help you understand what are going on with deals, but then you can also bring this to your stakeholders as something of value. So there will be a link shared. It's actually in the comments chat right now. If you're interested, go ahead and click on that and fill out the information, and we'll follow up with you, and you'll receive that as our thank you for joining us today. So with that, what I'd like to do is switch over to some of the content we want to share with you today to get our conversation going. And, in my current role, I work a lot with AR folks, but I've spent over 20 years as an analyst myself on a different aspect of the relationship with AR teams. And I wanted to share some of my perspectives before I ask Alan and Molly to jump in. So if we look at marketing stakeholders as our starting point, I think there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration that can amplify the missions of both marketing stakeholders as well as analyst relations stakeholders. So let me go through a couple of things real quick. One of the things that I often hear AR people talk to me about as something they wish they could do more of is blend what they're doing in advance and do some planning with marketing stakeholders. And so to drive value through having advanced planning in place. So for example, if you take a research agenda coming from a firm that you're working with, and you look at what are some of the assessments that are coming out and some of the planned research, and you bring that to the marketing executive as they're planning their future year, as they're planning their budgets, as they're planning their workflow pipeline and their campaign pipeline. That advanced planning allows for coordination, but it allows for securing budget and securing mind share and time. And that way, the investments you've made in research can be amplified through a more effective marketing effort. Another thing that has struck me over the years is that, everybody wants to be a leader in a peak matrix assessment or some other kind of assessment, which is great, but not everybody is a leader. And you spend the time and the effort and your mind share with your executives getting that RFI done and participating in that study. But there are a lot of good stories outside of the leader quadrant that could be used for marketing purposes. So, for example, did you come out as a star performer, even if you're not in the leader quadrant? The star performer means you're performing above market averages on multiple dimensions. And that's a really good story to build a marketing campaign around. Similarly, are you new to the market? And if you're new to the market and you come in as a major contender, wow, that's an awesome place to start. Is there a story? So in this sense, what I'm trying to convey here is AR folks have a way of the research better than the marketing folks. So you have the opportunity to shape how marketing thinks about that performance in an assessment and to draw a good story from it. Similarly, the research that you have access to can help marketing craft more targeted and impactful messages. We all know that marketing teams will conduct focus groups, will do client testimonials, will interview sales executives to try to figure out what messages to hone on. Well, there's a whole portfolio of research that marketing teams have access to directly as well as through you to make sure that those messages are more nuanced and as targeted as they can be. So there's a natural synergy there that I think sometimes is left on the table that people don't fully take advantage of. Similarly, if we change the direction of the equation, how is analyst relations proactively thinking about amplifying the agenda of the marketing organization, right? So again, can we coordinate ahead of time and say, look, these are the themes, these are the concepts, this is the messaging that we need to get out into the market in the next 12 months. Analyst relations, how can you help me do that? And then analyst teams, AR teams putting together their own template of what will that look like when we engage with analysts and when we conduct briefings, for example. How do we coach our executives on what the marketing team is interested in conveying in the market? And then lastly, and then I'm going to jump to Alan and Molly in a moment, but here at Everest Group, we have a whole body of direct users that download our research, that engage with us on inquiries and briefing sessions, that are marketing executives. The way we're set up is that our universal access model allows any executive in your firm to engage with us as much as you would like them to, or when they are in need of a specific piece of guidance or thought partnering. And so that's not a limiting factor when it comes to working with our research analysts. So keep in mind that those folks can get involved in that conversation directly as well. And, they have we consider them equal research users. So that's another resource you can bring to them, is that level of access to research as well as analysts. So just setting up some thought and some context here. I'm noticing, by the way, thank you everyone for participating in the quest to get your locations. We've got folks from the UK, we've got folks from India, we've got folks from Dallas, we've got folks from Pakistan. We have somebody coming in from Austin. So, thank you everyone for putting that information up there and letting us know you're here with us. So with this context of marketing, Alan, you included in your intro that part of your responsibility to grow this global talent business at Accenture is to work with marketing teams. So can you share a little bit more about your experience on any of these or otherwise that you found helpful in terms of AR and research?
Yeah, definitely. And, it's interesting. We're all living in this environment now where there's so much change happening and everybody's being challenged to work differently. And, I think everybody is being expected to have a greater impact. My analyst relations associate that I've worked with over the years has really done a great job, I think, of also becoming not just an analyst relations person, but a business relations person. So in my case, she's has really built great internal bridges or networks and has done a great job of knowing me, knowing our business, and really educated me on what analysts can do, if you will, beyond the briefing and publishing results of the briefing, if you will. So I think that's been a way that she's found leverage is to give us as business people and marketing individuals exposure to what are the capabilities of the analysts in terms of information and so forth. So, obviously the annual briefing is a really important thing. And, the positioning of your organization or your product or your service can really help boost awareness and credibility in the marketplace. But, it's really critical that to be able to connect the other capabilities of the analyst firm into the marketing department so that we're taking advantage of things like, extra research, messages. Everybody's creating their own messages in the marketplace. Are they really differentiated or do they sound the same to the customer? You can test those messages with an analyst organization, if you will. So I think that's important. And the other thing I would just add is that, once the briefing is completed, it's really important to have a plan to make the best use of that. So, internally, externally, make sure that those results, if you will, and those insights are being communicated to your sales team, your customers, and so forth in a very comprehensive way. So, again, I think for me, it's all about bridge building, and in the analyst relations role, which I think many of you are, is making sure you're really connecting in the best of the analysts and, back into the marketing organization and also, taking full advantages of those briefing outcomes. So, Molly, I'll maybe pass it over to you for some added thoughts on that one.
Sure. So, gosh, AR is just stepping up over time. I've really seen even a lot of AR really coming and having discussions with our analysts, highly strategic, really having a deep understanding of the business, connected to the executive leadership, and also more and more sales. So one of the things that we did recently is an AR client came to us and said, I really need your help. A client partner is having a struggle with a renewal, and they have a new CIO that has come in as a new contact. And I said, I don't know if this deal, the solution is even fair market. I might be taking this out to bid. What can you do to help us? So we got on the phone with the client partner, AR, and we put a plan together and helped them to benchmark their deal, benchmark their total contract value, solution sizing. And so they could have something to take to this new CIO and say, this is best practice. Here's where we stand. Here's a third-party research, fact-based, data-driven from live contracts actually in the market now. And it proved to really have a positive impact and have an effective outcome for the client partner, for the organization. The AR person knew to immediately get them on the phone with the Everest Group. So that's one way I've seen just a lot more interaction when it comes to sales pursuits and helping the sales organization.
Great, thank you. That's a great segue to the other area that we wanted to focus on, which is the sales organization, right? So let me ask us to put those slides up. So we're talking. Molly gave an example of positioning for competitiveness, right? And one of the things that I find is that there are so many things in the research membership toolkit that are sometimes undervalued in terms of the part of the investment or underutilized. And so, let's face it, everybody's really interested in the assessments and the peak matrix, but that's only part of what's available in order to achieve better competitiveness, right? And I like to think that there's a lot of really good stuff that can be then customized and personalized in the context of your organization that are outside the scope of that peak matrix. So we're talking about one-on-one inquiries with our research team and our lead analysts, and there's so much that's not published in the documents that are available that can then be looked at through the lens that's specific to your overall business or particular pursuit that you have. We do strategy sessions. Similarly, those are built into memberships most of the time, and they can be very targeted. They can be targeted towards you building out a strategy for many months ahead, or how to deal with a particular scenario with a particular client or a particular new technology. We've been doing so much around generative AI. So that's an example. Competitive assessments, very targeted. And if you've ever interacted with our team, you know that we go in deep, even on an inquiry. Gap analysis, buyer trends. These things are sometimes, not fully utilized by the sales executives or their support team. So I'm encouraging you to think about them as how they impact your sales competitiveness. Custom engagements. So Molly gave an example of a custom engagement. These are, we do work that's very targeted around particular bids or particular proposals. I'm sure other firms perhaps think of these things as well, research firms, but what it allows us to do is look at a very detailed scenario and go into it in depth. And that's what's needed in the sales scenario. Published research takes you part of the way, but when you are dealing with a multi-million-dollar engagement and you need to make sure that your proposal is as compelling and as cutting edge, you sometimes need to step back and take the time and budget the resource and budget the people in order to make the difference in your deal. And the thing about the custom work is, despite everything that an individual sales leader or an individual practice leader may have visibility to in their portfolio, it is still, by definition, a narrower focus on the market than a research firm like ours, which looks across geographies, across industries, across sizes of companies, and has a better sense of the bigger context that perhaps your client is actually seeing from their vantage point, okay? And so that breadth allows us to have conversations that can sometimes be uncomfortable and target the elephants in the room that maybe the internal teams either don't want to talk about or don't see. And we can come in and say, hey, let's take a step back. And from our vantage point, we have something to contribute to this conversation. We also are working heavily with a lot of enterprise clients, a lot of large enterprise clients, global players. And what that allows us to do is, first of all, understand what they're doing, but keep in mind that they're seeing they're seeing the research as well. They're seeing the findings about what's going on in the market as well. How are solutions changing? How are technology requirements changing, and so forth? So bringing the research that you have access to your stakeholders allows them to see the same content, the same perspective on the market that your clients are. So it'll bring you closer to having conversations that are aligned with how the clients are educating themselves and hearing about it. So you want to be able to use the same tools and the same insights and make those available to sales stakeholders. Numbers talk. You may have direction, you may have a sense of what's going on with the market, but again, having data and actual numbers to set the context beyond the scope of that client or beyond the scope of your practice to what's happening in the market widely, again, can be very compelling to a client who wants to make sure that they themselves are aligned, and that you understand what their particular objectives are in the marketplace. And as a reminder, sales executives have access to the same inquiries, to the same strategy sessions, to the same briefings that you as an analyst relations executive or professional do. And we encourage you to keep that in mind and get your sales folks on the phone with our analysts, and have the conversations more directly with your participation. So with that context, I wanted to start off by asking Molly first this time, what do you see as, you gave one example, but as you were saying, it's becoming a more sophisticated role, the analyst relations role. And as they're moving more to supporting sales, how are you seeing that happen? We had one question from our audience about, are companies being held to more, I think figurative, meaning to dollar amounts of contribution to the pipeline. And Alan, maybe you have a perspective on this. But, and how are folks grappling with that? How are AR people trying to address that?
Sure. So yes, I see that question from, I think, if I pronounce it right, Onful. So how does an analyst company bring value in terms of sales? Is it figurative, or how? Could you please explain that too? So I'm going to give my 2 cents, kind of going off what Katrina said as well. There's a number of ways I've seen over the years, and it's becoming more and more prevalent, I would say, with AR getting involved with sales and being asked actually to make an impact more on sales. So I can give you just some examples that you can use as part of just membership. So some ideas are, if you have monthly sales meetings, our analysts as part of inquiry can come and do a briefing on the latest buyer trends, buyer patterns, adoption trends. What do people actually care about? We just completed our key issues survey we do every year, talking about where are people going to be spending their money next year? What are their priorities? What are the biggest challenges? What's happening? Gen AI, we haven't said the word yet, I don't think. That must be a record these days, about 25 minutes in saying Gen AI, because that's the lead of every conversation, it seems. But we could also talk about that. So I see AR really thinking more creatively, saying, hey, our sales team could really use some insight to help bring up their level of discussion with clients and actually arm them with some charts, some slides, so they can speak to exactly what is happening in the industry using fact and using research and having a research data-driven kind of conversation. So that's one idea. Another one is, all of this research that we publish on the reports portal that many of you have access to already have profiles for, all of the competitors in the market. So if I'm in sales, and I'm selling a product or service in the market, I would absolutely need to have access to that research when I know I'm competing against this company, that company. How can I best position myself? Can I get on a 30-minute call with an analyst and say, hey, in your eyes, how are we differentiated from XYZ? I'm going to be speaking with the CIO I've never spoken to before. Do you have any ideas of what is going to be most important? What do you have any slides even that I could use to anchor a conversation? I mean, some people are just asking these really smart questions and just getting the analyst insight, because I think, as you all know, I think last year, it's hundreds. We do hundreds. It could even be into the thousands of interviews with the buyers themselves. So your clients. So we really see the best practice of what clients are valuing, your clients are valuing. So if you're able to bring those type of insights and make sure sales is armed with that information, that absolutely will be very effective as I've seen it. There's also, besides the buying trends, there's a lot of different research-based state of the market reports to also just have a level set and validation of what are some of the trends happening, And so I think some of the best salespeople are really in tune to that and will cite research in their conversations. So those are some things that you can do and just leverage the membership that you have now with sales. Whether if there's a pursuit, whether there's a renewal, whether there's a conversation with a new logo. In all these situations, our analysts can have a conversation to help your sales organization be more effective. And that's something, as I said, is already part of membership. And some of you are already doing that. So way to go. And actually, an analyst just the other day said, wow, it was about an AR person. This person can run strategy for that organization. Was that clued in to the strategy, what the really key challenges were, really looking at the gaps of what they need to do to be more successful with their portfolio of services, and also with their technology and their partnerships. So it's a very interesting time. And as Alan said, everybody's asked to kind of shift, do different things, maybe wear a lot of hats, as everyone does. And this is one way that you can really leverage Everest Group to help you bring value more to the organization. Over to you, Alan, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, no, that was really good, Molly, and quite comprehensive. I would just, I guess echo that, when it comes to sales or growth, right, whether it's organic or inorganic, we're really leaning on the analysts to help us, really I think of them as part of our extended team, right? Because as mentioned, we're all trying to do more with less. And I think there's a whole wealth of insight and capability out there that is often untapped. And so, we've used, through the AR function, we've utilized the analyst's expertise to help us with things like doing, custom research on acquisition targets, right? So think about growth, inorganically. That's an interesting, utilization of an analyst that may not be potentially top of mind for some of you. Just in terms of organic growth and sales, though, yeah, I agree. In many competitive situations, understanding who your competition is and what are their strengths and perhaps their weaknesses relative to yours, those insights are tremendously valuable for our sales teams. And we've had some, as Molly mentioned, some, one-on-one quick discussions with the analyst firms in order to, gain some insights to help us with our win themes and what we should focus on to differentiate with the client. We've done some, competitive pricing benchmarking. So again, some custom research to help with understanding how do we stack up from a pure pricing standpoint with competitors in different markets around the world. And so that's another bit of information that can help really, allow your organization to be more relevant for the client in terms of sales strategy and pricing strategies. Just one other area from a client perspective is we've been in some workshops with clients who are undertaking, some sort of a transformation program. And, they've been talking to different potential suppliers or vendors like Accenture. And we've brought in, just to bring in an independent point of view on the market, we've brought in analysts into those workshop discussions. Art of the Possible workshop discussions to share sort of an independent view of what they're seeing in the marketplace. What are the key trends in, recruiting 4.0, RPO 4.0, or whatever the topic is, which has really stimulated the client's thinking, and also, credentialized us as bringing in some thought leadership from outside into the client workshop discussion. So I think there's just a wealth of opportunity on the sales side. In addition to, understanding what contracts are coming up for renewal, that's obviously important as well. But I would just say, when thinking about, as an AR person, understand, what are the sales pursuits that your organization is going after? What are the key sort of initiatives that they're being followed? And whether it's you or people that you've empowered in the sales organization, I would err on the side of asking for help, because sometimes, my analyst relations or my analyst contact might say no, but I found in most cases they say, yes, we think we can help you in that area. And I just think it's a great lever that's available to most of us that is untapped or underutilized. And I would encourage you to ring that phone more often with the analyst to ask for help in a particular sales area and see what they can do to help out. So I hope that's useful for you all.
Yeah, Alan, I love the personal experience, and you shared experiences from different contexts. So I think that's really good. Hopefully, Madhurima asked some questions, and I think perhaps you've covered some of them. In your response, maybe without even having known he asked the question. But so thank you. I hopefully that tackled that question. One thing that came to my mind that I wanted to highlight, just listening to what you're saying, is, first of all, there's a difference between analyst relations and advisor relations. I wanted to emphasize that our conversation today is about analyst relations. I know advisor relations is much more closely aligned with the pipeline and the deal pursuit, and from a evaluation and incentive standpoint is much more aligned with closing business. And I wanted to kind of be clear about that we're talking about analyst relations here. So that's the framework we're bringing to the conversation. I think the other thing is that one of the things that you hear, a lot of people talk about price benchmarking, a lot of people talk about deal assessment. I think as an AR person, part of your role, of course, is to evaluate the options out there in the marketplace. And it's worth kicking the tires on the proposals that you receive to help answer these kinds of questions, right? And not all price benchmarking is the same. Not all deal and bid support is the same. Not all proposal reviews are the same. And what you need to understand and assess is who's doing what in terms of your options in the marketplace, which I'm sure you know that, but I think you find that different firms have different capabilities along the continuum of what a research firm can bring. And I just encourage you to probe and to ask questions in some of these areas, as well as what you do when it comes to published and syndicated research. And I think you'll find that you can accomplish different things in meeting your internal stakeholders' objectives through that kind of an exercise. So just encouraging you to think about that. Not all price benchmarking is the same and so forth. That was one thing I wanted to share with you. I wanted to put a reminder out there. We are offering, as a thank you for joining us today, access to complimentary EGMI readout from our database of deals that are active in the marketplace. You have the option of either a set of deals, 200 to 300 deals that are in the ITS and digital space, or the BPS and digital space. And there's a link that was in the chat. Can I ask my colleagues to put that? Can I ask my colleagues? Thank you so much. If you look in the chat, you'll see the link. You can use that to request one or the other. I will follow up with you afterwards. But basically, you'll get a readout on 200 individual deals, who signed it, when it was signed, what's included, what service providers, what timelines, what technology components, what geographies. And actually, both data sets also include information about GBS centers, global business services centers. So we know a lot of companies, providers out there are looking at the business opportunities around GBS centers as well. So that'll be included in what you receive. So just a little bit of a plug for that. We got a question from Pat about how do you get customer perspective? I'm not sure if you're asking how Everest Group gets customer perspective, or how you as an AR person can bring customer perspective into what you're doing to support your colleagues. Allow me to put something out there and then see if either you offer some clarity on your question or my colleagues here want to jump in. But in my experience, there's multiple ways of getting customer perspective. Some of it is broad breadth. So we just completed our 2024 key issues survey, and Molly referred to it. So it's looking at a larger segment of respondents to hit on key topics. But we spend a lot of time having one-on-one conversations, either through virtual roundtables or in the context of doing our research, where we solicit input and feedback from actual practitioners and decision makers. And so that's where we get to have, of course, by nature, fewer conversations, but they go in very deep. And we maintain those connections so that we will revisit those conversations over time. And that's where we get to the real fine nuances of what enterprises and decision makers are thinking about. And so I think, Pat, thank you for the clarification. So those are the two main methods. Of course, we speak at conferences, we attend conferences, we're invited into closed door decision-making sessions through our custom work, where we're working closely with an enterprise who is really trying to make an important decision about the direction of their operations. And they need to input on service providers and technology, and even the general direction that they want to take their environment in. And so that's another example of where we have very deep dive conversations. Angie, okay, never mind, you saw it. Great. The link is the link for those of you that are looking for the link. It is in the chat stream, and feel free to go ahead and take a look at that. So I'm noticing the time. If you have any more questions, please go ahead and post them. We have a question. Can you give some examples of how AR can impact the sales pipeline, win rates, awareness, time to close, etc.? Wow, those are a little bit, those are tough ones to tackle, of course, because it's in an AR role, you're indirectly involved with that, right? And I'm gonna actually throw this one to Molly because she has those conversations, I think, fairly regularly, or hears those concerns, I should say, fairly regularly. Molly, what's your take on that? Do you see AR people effectively impacting those kinds of metrics? Because it's kind of a tenuous connection, really.
Well, I think they are just connecting their sales organization, sales leadership to a couple of our key partners. That conversation alone, as part of membership, can just scratch the surface, right? Scratches the surface, gives some good insight into just understanding more about, okay, where are you in your journey in sales? Are you struggling? I mean, recently a AR person did that, and we had a discussion with them, with one of our partners. They were having a really hard time competing. They were losing a lot of deals. And so just hearing from the partner on, are others experiencing this in the industry? Who is, why is this happening? What could be behind this? Just hearing a third party perspective that's talking to the market, not only to the end customers, but also to other providers and technology product vendors. They have a really good view of the entire ecosystem of what's happening. So just at a minimum, a discussion that helps, and always, is really useful for sales leaders to get just an outside view perspective, because a lot of it is just internal. They hear different things, but just hearing it directly from the partner analysts and having that discussion, it really kind of brings clarity and says, okay, let's get beyond the hype, beyond, clearing the smoke a little bit, having something that's rooted in some of the research that the analysts have been doing. It kind of gives them a little bit more conviction and, okay, this is what we need to do. Now, the second level of that would be, there's a number of things that we've done. So for win rates, for example, win-loss assessments, we've done a number of those for our clients, where the sales organization has us do and conduct research with their clients and do a detailed win-loss assessment for them. Sometimes it's just a matter of benchmarking their go-to-market and specific how they do pursuits and benchmarking that with best practices in the industry, because we help people with their pursuits and also with the enterprises. So we have a really interesting view of and can have those kind of conversations and do that kind of research. But these are all kind of customized solutions where to really get to the recommendation and a path forward and a roadmap to really have an impact. But at a minimum, it's always valuable to get the sales leadership on the team with our partners. And a couple other things, other ideas that other people have done in this for the same question. So we do what's called strategic engagement reviews, where a provider comes to us, and it's happened where they actually will come to us with their client together. It's a transparent strategic partnership because it is a large client of theirs. So it's more for those that it's a really strategic, people might say diamond client, and they come to us together and say, hey, we really want to build on this strategic partnership. We want to know what we can do to create a mutual value creation and create some win-wins. And in the end, that takes 8-12 weeks to really do, benchmarking all aspects of that. And then a workshop together with the client and the provider has an amazing impact. I've seen that. But those are unique situations where you have the provider and the enterprise, a true partnership where they're willing to come together. Now, we've had just the provider come and do a benchmark, or just the enterprise come to us and do a benchmark of the whole relationship or proposal or contract. But coming together for those really big ones and kind of preempting any type of something down the road that could go bad, a recompete, really kind of putting up a defense strategy to make sure that this client understands that we are in this for the long run. We're going to be strategic with you, and we're going to do what we can to make sure that there's a win-win, adding in those innovation levers, coming up with new ways, again, for that value creation. And that's seen a positive impact on overall relationships with large contracts. So there's a number of things for that question.
Yeah, it's a complicated one, isn't it? But you gave some good examples.
Yeah, it can be a lot. But like I said, just starting with the conversation would be good.
Yeah, I think one of the things that this conversation, the theme that I've picked up through this conversation, is that there needs to be a proper framing of it needs to be conversation around what exactly is AR supposed to be accomplishing, right? And you know, this whole question about pipelines and time to close and things of that sort, it raises in my mind the question: is it truly what is AR most effective to be pushed to be responsible for moving the number on your stat in relation to how long it takes to close a deal? Or does AR have the opportunity to educate their stakeholders to say, I'm not best positioned on this particular deal, or maybe I am or I'm not, but let's say you're not. But I can help you take a step back and say, why is our close rates always longer? Why are our win rates always less? Why do we seem to chronically miss on this particular kind of scenario? And then take a step back. And as Molly was saying, AR is in the position to support sales, to do a little bit of soul searching, to then say, oh, this is what we need to fix systematically in order to be more effective in selling this product line, this service line, in this kind of client scenario, or what have you. Then the system has been adjusted, and AR can show a more lasting and profound impact beyond particular transactions. And so I wanted to kind of throw that out there. I don't know, Alan, we're kind of going down a very AR centric view of the world, but does some of this resonate with you? Like, how have you?
I just think, yeah, I mean, I just think at the end of the day, you know, as an employee of the organization, right, the AR role is there to help, you know, drive growth, drive profitable growth, you know, and the key way they're doing that is by, you know, having a relationship with an analyst who's able to represent the organization appropriately in the marketplace, you know, help to build the brand and so forth. And I think that in addition, through this discussion, we're saying there's a whole bunch of other things that are available to the AR function that they can leverage, that analysts do, that can help to drive that growth beyond, you know, beyond a briefing discussion and the peak matrix or whatever it is, right? So I think it's incumbent upon the AR role to understand what are those offerings or capabilities of the analysts, understand deeply what's happening in the business, and building those bridges and connecting the dots in order to help solve some of those problems, right? They're not going to solve all the problems, but I think it's a connection function, you know, into the sales organization, or that where the information is flowing a lot more seamlessly and easily between the functions. That would be my sort of take on it.
Okay, thank you. I'm just looking at some of the comments and the questions. Abhinav, I'm not entirely clear what you're asking. If you are still on and you could post a little bit of clarification to your question, we can try and get that answered in the next 12 minutes or so. I'm noticing the comment from Wendy Schlensky. Thank you, Wendy, for that. You ask about the risk that some providers feel in sharing a challenge with an analyst, and how that might impact the likelihood that the analyst will recommend them on a deal. I think that's where it's an interesting question. I think that's where you have to understand the characteristics of the individual research firm and the approach of the analysts at different firms. Here at Everest Group, and again, I was an analyst for many, many years, so I know this from the inside. First of all, just in general, whether it's at Everest Group or any other firm, analysts are generally very eager to help everybody succeed in what they're doing, right? If we're talking to a provider, regardless of which firm you're at, you want to be helpful to them. You want to give them honest feedback. You want to give them helpful feedback. So keep that in mind. Nobody's out there to get you. the other thing is with the enterprises, it's the same, right? We're trying to make sure you pair up with the right tech vendor or the right service provider. And so that's what kind of motivates most analysts out in the marketplace, is to know that they've done something helpful for their client. So keep that in the background. But in terms of this specific question, you know, at Everest Group, if I can speak on behalf of Everest Group, I can't speak on behalf of other firms. Our approach is to make everybody as informed as possible in the process of making their decisions. And so we do not make particular final vendor or provider recommendations in our work. We try to get you as close as possible to having a really effective short list. But so this is where understanding the reality of the service provider and the client makes the most sense, because a bad match is a bad match, whether it happens intentionally or by accident. It's a bad match, and it doesn't serve anybody. It's when the honesty is there to say, look, this is what we're good at, and this is what we're not good at, and this is where we think we can bring value to a client on a case-by-case basis, is how we approach it. So it's not so much that we don't want to recommend somebody, but we also don't want to put a service provider in a position where they're not set up for success either. And so it's a different way of looking at the equation. And it's really a capability and a fact-based sort of element, as opposed to as a preferential kind of relationship. So I'm going to leave it at that. I don't know, Molly, as the other Everest Group person on this call, did I characterize it the way you would have, or would you describe it differently?
Yeah, I don't see a whole lot of people holding back on anything when it comes to their challenges. I feel like the analysts probably, and I do. I mean, I always think that, like Katrina said, that there's even more respect when you're there to learn, and to have a strategic conversation, and say, how can we do better? And this is where we're struggling. There's more conversations on that. So I don't see providers holding back at all. I mean, they want to know, are other people, they'll share it and say, are other people struggling with this? This is where, we're really struggling. We're having a challenge with this, that, I mean, I don't see anybody holding back. That they share those because they want to know, are others having the same issue? And they want to know, I mean, they're great people to be bouncing these challenges and get perspectives and insight. And Alan, I mean, I think you're one of the most important people to probably answer this question. What kind of, I guess, mindset do you have, or have you had? Has this ever crossed your mind when you've talked to an analyst firm?
Yeah, it has. And I think it comes out of a trusted relationship with the analysts, right? And having that in place. But I would err on the side of transparency with the analysts, because I think through that, you get your business problem resolved. Yeah. And B, it's really a learning experience for both, us as the requesting organization and the analyst firm on, the marketplace, and what are some of the challenges out there in the marketplace. It's a business. There are bumps, and I think everybody understands there's going to be bumps in the product development, sales, marketing, whatever it is, process. There's nothing like perfection out there. So I think it's okay to show a few warts and challenges that you're experiencing, and and have a very open, transparent discussion. I think that helps the relationship more than it may damage or impact the concern that you think it's going to hurt you from a positioning perspective.
Okay, great. We have one more slide that's sort of a takeaway slide. Can we throw that one up there, please? Thank you. So I tried to capture some of the themes that we've talked about, right? And I thought we might be talking about. And so optimizing what you already have access to. I think you've heard Alan talk about it, Molly talk about it, and I mentioned it. But we're talking. So I can tell you, I have often seen the membership year, 3/4 of the way through, and having a client realize that they've left their strategy session to the last quarter, or they have maybe a set of inquiries that they have been wanting to get to and haven't. So use what you have and you've invested in. There's a lot of value there. Advanced planning is part of this whole theme that we've had about being able to support sales and marketing, not necessarily being in the position to close the deals, but that's the job of sales. But can we make those sales organizations and those marketing organizations more prepared and more effective? And that requires that advanced planning we've been talking about. And so I know everybody has like 20 different things from 20 different directions coming at them, because that's what AR is about, is a lot of juggling a lot of balls in the air. But carving out time for some of this could make a big difference in your level of influence in the organization. Connecting sales and marketing executives directly to our senior research leads, that is definitely something that we welcome. I did a little bit of research before our call. About 10% of the downloads that happen on our website, our research content website, on a regular basis comes from sales and marketing executives directly. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, right? We were talking about all the custom conversations we have. So there's an opportunity there to do more, depending on how you've structured your analyst relations dialogue internally and how your organization uses and perceives AR. But that opportunity is there. And then trust. We all talk about trust, but keep in mind that it's trust in how your stakeholder is going to work with analyst relations and what the AR can do for them, but is also the trust of what the experience with the analyst team that you engage is going to be about, right? And we all know this, but it impacts the relationship in magnitudes of order difference, not just a little bit more, but once you establish that trust, it seems like a lot of doors open up to driving more valuable conversations. So those are my last parting thoughts. Alan, Molly, any last minute thoughts on your part?
I mean, I think three things that I would just say is, as an AR professional, look beyond the annual briefing to drive more value back into the business. I think the way you can do that is by really deeply understanding the business, right? And what's going on in the business, and deeply understanding the analysts and their offerings, and building those bridges and connecting those dots. So I think those are sort of the three things that I would say as final thoughts.
Molly?
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add beyond what Alan just said, other than, the research that we already have available. A lot of it is just highly relevant. And like I said, if I were an AR person, I would be definitely sharing that research and specific ones with the sales organization. Because like I said, that for me, if I were selling a technology product or service, and that's able to help me be more effective, that would bring a lot of value and help me, bring more value to the overall organization and to clients. So that would be the one thing I would encourage is definitely try to utilize the research for your sales organization and make sure they're aware of what's there for them.
Yeah, it's all about value, because I know when I'm trying to get the attention of our sales teams, it's got to be very honed, very curated, very targeted to what they're interested in, and they'll pay attention. Otherwise, it's like 0 or 100. And that's the reality, because they're heads down trying to do what they need to do.
Yeah.
So thanks, everybody. I appreciate all the comments. Angie, Robin, Stephen, Wendy, thank you so much. And others that had been throwing in comments. Appreciate it. One last thing, we are having our 2 different webinars coming up. One of them is our general findings from the 2024 key issues webinar. That is happening on December 12th, I believe, right about there. And you can sign up for that. But then we have the AR version of that key issues event happening on January 11th, where we take the predictions that our analysts are coming up to and pivot it to say, what does this mean for AR people? How can AR people plan their year with these predictions in mind and these market issues in mind? And that's a webinar. It's a little different format than our LinkedIn Live. It's a webinar on January 11th. So sign up and join us for all of them. Take care, everybody. Have a good day or evening, whatever is ahead of you. And we'll do our next LinkedIn Live in Q1 of next year. Take care. Thank you, Alan. And thank you, Molly, for
Thanks.
a great conversation.
Bye-bye.